type of training and experience have you had?
So I went through firearm safety, and then I did previously briefly own a taser, but not quite a taser, just like a little stun gun. So my training was very minimal. Probably would have been about 12 to 14 years old. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't know anybody that's ever been shocked or stunned by a taser?
No.
Okay. So you had it when you were 14?
Oh, yeah, I think I was like 14 around the time I did it, yeah.
Do you presently own a taser?
No.
Okay.
No.
Are you willing to serve as a juror on this case?
Yes. Yeah.
There is a question here that you can't read, watch, or listen to news accounts of the trial. You're not to talk to anybody about the case. You're not to post anything on social media or elsewhere. And the question is, would you find it difficult to follow these instructions for any reason? And the response that you had on the questionnaire was, no, I don't believe so. Can you tell me that you won't do it?
Yes, I will not do it. My only really social media that I use will be very easy for me to just delete off my phone, and then, yeah.
Okay.
There's not going to be any issues with that.
All right, thank you.
I understand how serious this is.
In response to one question that states, is there any other reason that you could not be a fair and impartial juror in the case? You said that I am slightly distrustful of cops. I believe they have an incredibly hard job, but I believe they should be held to the highest standard of scrutiny. Now, there is probably going to be testimony concerning what a reasonable police officer would do under the circumstances. Can you apply those standards and not any higher standard that you believe that cops should be held to?
Yes, and I can see how my language there is a little, yeah. But yes.
Okay.
I think the main point I was trying to get at there is that, like, people are people, and I don't think that a badge should, like, exclude you from consequences to actions potentially. Yeah, just like the other side of that coin is also, like, you know, like, shouldn't trust somebody just because there's a badge there either, you know. So.
All right, thanks. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rasmussen.
Good afternoon.
I'm Earl Gray. I'm a lawyer for Kim Potter, and that's Paul Ang. We were introduced by the court early on. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your questionnaire, not many.
Yeah.
And our goal is to find a fair and impartial juror for our client, Ms. Potter. One of the questions I have is, since you answered this questionnaire a couple months ago, was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And since that time, is there any new information you would have included in this questionnaire that you can think of?
When I filled out that questionnaire, I was definitely rushing. I filled it out like the day before it was supposed to get sent out. So anything I would have done differently would have just taken a little more time with it. But no new information per se. I have not looked up the case or looked up any more details or been discussing it with anyone. So I haven't, if anything, I've unlearned information just by it, like, you know, not seeing the video and it not being fresh in my mind anymore. So.
Okay. Besides this questionnaire and the questions that were asked by the court, is there any other information that we didn't include in the questionnaire that you would think would be pertinent to us?
I felt like the questionnaire was pretty in depth. I felt like it covered a lot of topics. I did not finish it thinking, oh, is that it? Or anything like that. So no.
Okay. One of the questions on page 13, and I think the judge has already asked you about this a little bit. Under our system of justice, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence produced in court and the law that the judge instructs. Now, what that means, of course, is that the multiple times that you watch this video, they have to be set aside. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of a legal fiction because it's extremely difficult to do. Would you attempt to do that and set that aside?
Yes, definitely.
And then not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. And with that regard, you answer, I would try my very best at least. Would you involve your bias or passion or prejudice or sympathy in your decision making in this case?
No, I know bias is a real thing that everyone holds, and I will actively do my best to not, like, lean into that at all. And I know, like, the judge's words to us when we were sitting over there, like, really helped clarify, like, what my responsibilities as a juror would be, which is not something I was super clear of filling out that questionnaire. So.
Okay. And with respect to the 15-hour overnights, mm-hmm. You answered that to the court, and I wasn't quite clear. Is it going to happen now, if you're selected on this jury and you're called back on the 8th, that they will change, Target Corporation will change a work schedule for you so you don't have to work a 15-hour night and come in here on a Tuesday without sleep?
My job has been very accommodating. I believe
that doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, I believe they will put me on an actual leave where I will not be working during this period. If I am working, I would just be working Saturday and maybe a half day on Sunday, so I'm still going home and getting sleep.
Okay, and so you wouldn't be working a full week then, correct?
No. Yeah, and I still need to connect with HR and, like, see exactly how that looks like, but I know they do have great leave programs and stuff, and they do have one specifically for jury duty.
Are you going to be paid for the time you're on leave?
From my understanding, yes, 70% of my salary. So.
Were you involved at all, and I've seen this on the news, with respect to Target and some other companies were sort of attacked by 10, 15 people to steal items out of the store? Did you have any involvement in that?
No, I work at a distribution center, or the distribution center, so no.
Okay.
Yeah.
The distribution center, did you have to send some more product out to these Target stores that were hit?
Well, there was a Target store or two that were like kind of shut down completely, so we were not sending product there. So we did notice that. Yeah.
All right. Anything about that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this
No.
case?
Yeah. No.
Some of these questions sound stupid to you, but we have to ask them, and you wouldn't think that would affect your process, but you never know, because obviously we don't know you.
Yes. Yeah. I appreciate the due diligence. Yeah.
Okay.
I would hope the same for myself. So.
And with respect to a taser, you had some kind of a stun gun that Was a taser?
Yeah, again, I did that firearm safety class when I was 12 to 14. I realistically do not know much about guns or tasers. What I had was, I believe it would be technically a stun gun, not a taser. Just the one with like the two prongs that zap. It doesn't shoot a projectile or anything like that. So.
And you were 14?
I think I was 14, yeah.
Okay, do you remember the circumstances under which you purchased it?
Sorry, so yeah, I should clarify that. So I went through the firearm safety around 12 to 14. I owned the taser about 4 or 5 years ago. I spent the majority of my 20s playing in a touring rock band, and with that, we were living on the road in our van, so we just had that for protection. And actually, when we toured Canada, they actually confiscated it, and I just never bought a new one. So we never had use for it. So
tell us a little bit about riding with the rock band.
It was absolutely great. Like I said, I spent my whole 20s doing that. It was a great eye-opening experience, and I feel like as a result, like my worldview has like shifted and grown through that experience. So I'm very thankful for it. Not thankful for COVID and shutting that down, but you know, with that being shut down, like I've been able to focus on my work at Target. So, but yeah, being in a rock band was great. Loved it. And I guess in relation to how it pertains to this case, we never had any issues with like police officers. Any run-ins we had, they were extremely helpful and supportive. So.
What did you specifically do traveling with this rock band?
So I play bass guitar, and then I also handle the merch. So I design everything, and I handle the visual representation of the band. So.
And did you travel the whole United States?
Yeah, there's a few states that we haven't hit, but yeah, we've done the majority of the United States and a lot of Canada, and we had intentions to do Japan and England right before COVID hit. So, but. And
why did you stop doing that? Was there?
Oh, just COVID, but also like I'm knocking the door. I'm 30 or 29 right now, and you know, like all 4 of us now live in different cities and or states. So it's kind of like, I wouldn't say the natural conclusion, but it's transitioned from this is my focus in life to this is a hobby. So just, time. Yeah.
Do you still play in a rock band at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and when do you do that?
Play in a rock band, yeah, like we send tracks back and forth as we're writing for our next record, but one of us is in Missouri, one of us is Virginia, one's in Duluth, and I'm here in the Twin Cities. So physically getting together and playing, no, but I'm still technically playing in the band, yeah. So, I mean, every day I'm playing in my room and writing parts, but...
Okay, so you don't, on a Friday night or a Saturday night?
No. We just got offered to do a tour in February, but I don't feel comfortable. I'm very sensitive about COVID, so.
And what kind of a band was it? A rock and roll band?
Yeah, alternative rock, grunge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Getting to the question about is there any reason that you could not be a fair and impartial juror in this case? Please explain. And you answered, and I realized it was hurried because you had waited to fill this out till the last minute. But you did put down back then that you're slightly distrustful of cops. What happened in your 29 years that caused you to be distrustful of cops, if anything, or what you read, or maybe playing a guitar, you saw something that...
Right. A lot of it is just like different like court cases and stuff, or just different situations. Obviously, it's pretty easy for people to compile like video evidence of like police brutality and stuff, and like we had a very emotional year in Minneapolis the last couple of years, yeah, I don't know, like I am always worried about my bias getting in the way of like any interaction with somebody, and I try really hard to not try to judge a book, person, or situation by its cover. And that's something I've been working on with the cop thing. Like, I'm being honest, like there is a somewhat of a distrust there, but I do recognize that it's a very hard job, and it's not something that I could do myself. And I do see the value of the police force, and like it feels childish to say that there's a trust there because I do know if I need help, I'm reaching out and asking for that help. So, and that there's trust in there that I'm going to receive that help. So.
Could you set that aside, because I'm sure you've had a long time to think about this, but could you set that distrust aside in sitting on this jury?
Yes, I believe people are people regardless of your occupation.
Not only setting it aside, but the law is that my client and Paul's client, Kim Potter, she's presumed innocent of each and every element of the 2 crimes she's charged of. Can you presume her innocent?
Yes, and I think that is 100% how we should handle things in this country and in the court system. Yeah. And I think there's even a question in there about like my thoughts in general about the court system. And just to throw like kind of a generic quote out there, I think it's Winston Churchill, just like, democracy might be a terrible form of government, but it's the best thing we have. And I feel like that kind of loosely extends into this. Like, I don't think we have a perfect system, but I do think we might have the best that we have thought of yet. So, like, especially this trial by jury and by your peers.
Okay. The narrative you wrote on page 3, which would be the what you remember you've seen about this, and I won't ask this again, but you've got to block that out and just rely on what you hear from this case, and you'll probably see videos in this case also. You'll be able to do that?
Yes, yes. Luckily, I have an advantage where I do not have a great memory as well.
Okay.
But regardless of all the things I do remember, yes, I would be entering this with fresh eyes and open to new information, new nuances, and gray areas that might be talked about. So.
There's another question I have. You testified that you managed over 100 individuals at Target. Is that right?
Yeah.
And would you be willing to, when you get into the jury room in this case and you discuss the evidence and the law, would you be willing to listen to everybody else and not try and become the leader and have your own ideas and nobody else's?
Yes, definitely. I would say I'm not like an egotistical leader like that. I'm definitely a people-focused leader. I care a lot about nurturing success and nurturing growth. And a big part of that is listening to what people have to say, listening to their needs. Yeah. I don't steamroll anything if I can help it. So.
The last question is, what's the name of your band?
So we're called Weathered, so Weather with an ED at the end. We're signed to Face Down Records, so it should be an easy Google search. We're still very small, but it's worth it. I'm so biased, but we're good.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Frank? No.
Oh, I'm done?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just stay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Juror 7. I apologize for calling you by a number rather than name, but there's a reason we're doing that in this case. I come third, right, so I have a lot of my questions have been asked, and you've been very forthcoming. We really appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Probably just a few follow-up questions. You indicated you're very sensitive about COVID. Very, very wise to be so. I can tell you the court has gone to great lengths to be sensitive about that as well.
I'm appreciating it. Yes.
Yeah. Is the accommodations the court have set up here, the courts have set up here, okay with you? Is it causing you any concerns?
Yeah, I did not enjoy my elevator ride, but aside from that, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah, I was looking around for some stairs, and I was like, well, that's a lot of floors.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Well, they will try to, the Sheriff's Department will try to be very thoughtful about that, I'm sure, as the
Thank
process
you.
goes on.
Yeah.
You indicated something I think is very interesting, that you're very aware of biases. All people have them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say yes or no.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, as a court reporter taking things down.
Yeah,
So
my apologies.
no, it's a hard habit to break. So we're very tolerant of it. But if I say that, that's why. Anyway, so you will not let any biases affect your ability to be a fair and impartial juror, right?
Yes.
And recognizing that people have biases is probably a big part of making sure that you can do that without biases affecting a decision.
Yes.
Long-winded statement, but do you understand what I mean?
I believe so, yes.
And so, but on the other hand, I just want to make sure that being cognizant of biases and thinking about them, while great, wouldn't prevent you from making decisions
Yes.
as a juror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something you would consider, just like any other considerations you have to make as a juror in reaching a decision.
Yes. Yeah, with bias and stuff, I'm mindful of it. It's something I've been actively working on. Just in general, just trying to be a better person. The world is full of different people. People have different needs, different ways that they need to be talked to and addressed. With the bias thing, I do not believe, as I try to not lean into that bias, I don't think that I'm at risk of overcorrecting and ignoring my instincts or anything like that. So,
Didn't seem like that person, but just wanted to ask, it's not going to freeze you up, in a sense, and not be able to make decisions. And
right, yeah. No, it should not affect my ability to make decisions. No.
You have some cousins that are in law enforcement.
Yeah. Yes.
And you said, they're just cousins. How often do you see them? Or
Well, luckily I just saw them for Thanksgiving, but not too often. A couple times a year. It's just a holiday type thing. Not as close with them as I would like to be. So.
And again, some of that is thanks to COVID, right? But
Yeah.
do you have any concerns being serving as a juror in a case involving a police officer, what your family members might think later?
No, very much my own person. I very much value their inputs and their thoughts, but we disagree already on so many different things. Just that's just the nature of being human. So I think we have enough respect for each other to just respect each other. So.
If you can excuse me for just a second, please.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Juror 7. Your Honor, we would pass the juror.
Okay. Juror number 7, you will be on this jury. So, as I indicated before, we expect to start the trial on December 8th at 9 o'clock. You will be getting a call from the jury office confirming where you should go and what time you should report. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I'll contact my job right away.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of the day, okay?
Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Okay.
Thank you for being so accommodating for me today.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry? Sure. All right, council, we're going to break for lunch for 12:30 to 1:30. Okay, and I think the lunches will be brought up for you. All right. extremely careful about jurors' names. A couple of the jurors that were named, it's out there. So I don't want that to happen again. So, okay. And I know it was a mistake. We also have another issue. Juror number 16 has been called and she has not responded. And it's likely that she will not respond. So I guess I'd like to talk with the lawyers about what they want to do about that. Can we just skip her? Counsel? What's your feeling about that? Juror number 16 has been called and she hasn't responded. And she's probably unlikely to. If we could just skip over her and go to the next one, that would be my suggestion. Is there any objection to that?
Your Honor,
Yes?
as far as we're concerned, you could just excuse her because her son had some serious criminal trouble. She probably didn't want to discuss it.
Okay. All right, so everybody's in agreement. Carly, this is on the record. Everybody's in agreement that juror 16, who has not responded to phone calls, we can just skip her. Yeah, we'll just release her for cause. Yes.
16?
Okay, are the lawyers ready for juror number 8?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Hello, juror number 8. Please have a seat. And would you please remove your mask? Thank you. First of all, thank you for filling out the questionnaire. I just have a couple of follow-up questions, and the lawyers may have some too, okay? You indicated in your answer to the questionnaire that you had a somewhat negative general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter. I guess my question is whether or not you could set aside whatever impressions that you would have had with respect to Officer Potter or Daunte Wright and concentrate on what the evidence in the case is and decide the case solely on the evidence.
Well, I don't know about, I'd like to hear that question because it just doesn't sound like I would agree to something like that without having more information. So I don't know what I was thinking. Some of the questions were a little, kind of on the road. You don't know which way to go almost.
Yeah.
Some of them, but, but I don't know if you want to read that question to me. Maybe I could give you more insight.
The question was, from what you have seen, read, or heard, do you have a general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter? And there are little boxes to check, and you checked somewhat negative. Your response was because it's something no one wants to see happen.
It was probably it was a personal, I was reading them quick, personal thing. There's, when people work jobs and live their lives and everything like that, I mean, there might be nothing negative about it, I don't know, but it's a negative situation. So I was kind of taking the context of the situation. So it's, even if, it's somewhat, for some reason, it just made me want to put somewhat negative on there. It wasn't nothing to personally hurt or anything. It's more of the situation or something. I think I was looking at it in that context.
Okay, I understand.
I'm thinking.
But you could be fair and impartial to both sides here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, you use empathy and there's, we do, we value the police department, we value being a citizen, and when you're in a line of work, you are held to a higher standard, to a certain degree. It doesn't mean that you're, I don't know, it's just people in authority are held to a higher standard somewhat. That doesn't mean that I have an opinion either way, but, citizens have things that they do, and they're, so I mean, it's one of those bad situations.
Okay. During the course of this trial, you'll probably hear some evidence concerning what a reasonable police officer would do under the circumstances.
Right.
Would you be able to base your decision on whether or not the state has proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt on that testimony as opposed to any other personal opinion concerning what that duty is?
I think, if I knew more about the law and knew more about the information, and I would be as reasonable as I would want to make the most reasonable decision I could.
Okay, so in other words, you're going to keep an open mind.
Oh, definitely keep an open mind.
Okay.
I have no opinion either way. I mean, I didn't even really pay attention. I was up building my cabin, and I got that thing in the mail, and it's like, I hurried up and filled it out and sent it in, and I got rid of my cable TV like 3 years ago. So, I mean, I listen to music, and I do my thing at home, and I go up to my cabin. I really haven't been paying a lot of attention to stuff as much as I should.
Okay, without a TV, I can see that
But
would
I'm trying to
help.
I live my life as an open-minded person. I was raised in the cities, and I've always valued everything, being around people, and I value everybody. So.
Okay. problems? I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty with my computer. Do you want to be on this jury?
Oh, I'm a retired person. It fascinates me. I feel I can be very honest and impartial and listen to both sides. I feel I'm very capable of doing a good job, and I feel both sides would be very happy to have me on there, because once all the information gets out, because one side don't have all their information and they don't have all their information, and once everybody gets their information, who knows, they may all feel the same way. I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea. Right?
Right.
You know, but that's an unrealistic world, right? So, yeah.
All right. I liked your answer. Do you want to serve as a juror in this case? Yes. Why do you feel that way about serving as a juror? Because I am an open-minded and fair person.
Correct.
And that's what we are looking for. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have. But the attorneys may have some questions for you.
Good afternoon. Number 8. You're retired from your employment,
Yes.
and you just totally retired, or do you have another employment?
No, I don't have any unemployment.
Okay.
No, I'm retired full time. Yep, correct.
And can you think of anything that should be added to this questionnaire since the time that you filled it out a couple months ago? Any other news that we should know about you that isn't in this questionnaire?
Let me see. I don't think so. I haven't had a lot going on, so I don't know if I could add anything to it. You know.
Okay. Is there anything that the lawyers in this case should know about you in determining whether or not you'd be a proper fit for this case? Besides what's in the questionnaire, which is very thorough, I think.
Well, I don't know. I've always been an open-minded person, and I've had all types of friends and all types of backgrounds, and I just pretty open-minded, and I'm not afraid to if something leads you to something, I'm not afraid to go down that road. I'm pretty open. I mean, I don't feel.
You understand that because the state has the burden of proof to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense does not get to go forward until after they rest. Would you be able to keep an open mind until you hear all of the evidence, not only from the state, but from our client, Ms. Potter, and her witnesses? Would you be able to do that?
Yes, I think our society is getting better at keeping an open mind, because a lot of, just in general, I think, yeah, I really think I can keep an open mind, because I know everything, all the stuff against the defense is said first. And you're right, it'd be, they start painting a picture for the jurors' minds and stuff, and I think I can overlook that, because I'm a pretty open-minded person, and I have enough life experiences I can figure it out.
I see also that you were sort of the boss when you weren't retired of what you were doing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when the case is completed, the jurors are going to go out and make a decision, and it has to be unanimous. You understand that, right?
Right.
Would you have a tendency to try and take over those 12 jurors that are trying to decide this case because at one time you were the boss?
No.
Or are you retired long enough to get out of that phase?
That's one thing I wouldn't do, because when I was the whole time I was the boss, I always valued my subordinates underneath me, and when if they had a good idea and wanted to do it their way, I always, as long as the job got done, I went along with it. I don't micromanage people. I never did, and so you know, a lot of people that work underneath you are just as bright and just as smart as you are. It's just that you happen to be in that position because you applied yourself at a moment and you got it. So I wouldn't hold that against. No, I wouldn't put myself above anybody else.
Thank you, sir. That's
Yeah.
all I have.
Pass for cause, counsel?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Juror 8. I apologize, it's rather impersonal calling you by number rather than name, just the way we're doing it in this case, so forgive me for doing that. I have a couple questions to follow up with you about, and appreciate you being here and taking the time to do this. So you were a captain with the fire department.
Correct.
How long did you work in the fire department?
31 years.
And did you have a career before that, or has this been your...
Not much. I was a bartender. You know, that was it. When I was 19, I got married. I was a bartender, and then lived in Minneapolis. And a neighbor recruited me. I got the job, and I was on it for my career.
And worked your way up to captain?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've learned is that a fairly substantial percentage of fire calls are actually medical calls, right?
Correct.
And a substantial portion of fire calls, when you go to the scene, there's Minneapolis police already there,
Correct.
or come to the scene. So I assume over your career, you have worked fairly closely with Minneapolis police officers.
In some situations, we always waited until they cleared the scene before we would go on the scene and stuff like that. Yeah.
And in fact, that sort of protocol when going to a typical scene is the police officers are going to make sure it's safe for you to be there.
Correct.
So you stage somewhere else, I think is the term, right?
Yep.
And so in those circumstances, you rely on them to make it safe for you and the people you work with.
Correct.
And sometimes they're already doing life-saving measures by the time you get there and help out with that.
It happens. We're just as accessible as they are, so we usually, a lot of times we get there before the police most of the time. You know.
Okay.
So.
So obviously, over the course of a career, you've had a lot of good experiences with Minneapolis police officers.
Yep. Yep. Everybody kind of does their own job, and I've never had any real personal, like anything off the job or anything, but we always got along with people. You know what I mean? We get along with everybody. You know, we get along great with the community, with the police. Fire has always been the nice guy, and it's easy to be a fireman because everybody likes you.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of, you know, it's a good job being a fireman. So I was glad I picked that career.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, congratulations. It was a good career. You know, when you see those videos of, a fire at night when it's 2 below zero and you guys are out there, you get some appreciation for what a terrible job it can be sometimes, right? Or a difficult job. Do you have any friends that are police officers?
My nephew is a police officer, and he works in St. Cloud.
Okay.
I don't see him that often, but he's a police officer.
You ever talk to him about his job?
Here and there a little bit. Not a lot over the years because we never lived close to each other, but on holiday, once in a while in a family function or something, but not too much, you know what I mean?
In this case, obviously involves a police officer and,
Yep.
and other officers at the scene. You've had a lot of working relationships with police officers, a family relationship. Think you'd be more likely to believe an officer when they take the stand and testify because of your history working with them?
You know what? I like to think I would treat everybody the same. I would try to look at the situation and look at all the information and treat everybody the same. I mean, obviously the defense, you got to give them just what the judge said, got to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's where we start off until it's proven otherwise, But I mean, I don't think I would be biased at all. I mean, towards to our decision that we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, obviously there'll be some police officers that testify. Do you think you would, evaluate their testimony differently because of all the years of working with them?
No, and that's the reason of working, of being around people and seeing them interact and stuff. I don't feel like I would feel any different towards them as somebody else. I would just look at the information straight, because I don't feel that they're above me or below me or anything. They're people, everybody's a person, everybody's, and you just listen to the information and you try to make the right decision as a group, right? That's what I'm trying to do here, I guess.
Yeah. You think you can set aside the relationships you've had with police officers professionally or cousin, and just evaluate the testimony of a police officer like anybody else?
I feel I can, because I've never had an opinion either way, I guess, with strong feelings, I guess, with just in general with police officers or firefighters. We're all human. I mean, I feel like I can make the correct decision. I just always have as a fire captain. Always, you try to collect information and be reasonable and be fair to everybody, and there's two sides here, and that's what that's what's going on here. I understand that.
This is a tough question, and I suspect you probably haven't been asked questions like these, right? These are not the questions you get at family functions. So there are no right or wrong answers here, right?
Okay. No, I'm just trying to ramble on and be the honest as I can here. Is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. Because the tougher question is, when you're a juror and then you sit over there and you listen to everything, and then you go into a room, and that's the place, in there where you got to set aside, these relationships you've had in the past, and you've told us, I think, candidly that you would like to think you could do that, or you feel you would do that.
Yep.
Tell us, can you assure us that you'd be able to set that aside, go in with that sort of...
I object to this improper way here. He's asked the question numerous times.
Council, you can move on to a different topic.
I think, as I was trying to indicate to the juror, he said he feels like he could. We have to, I think we're allowed to pry into that a little bit. I don't disbelieve you, sir.
No. Well, let me see. I'll give you an example. I got to look at life experiences, how I've acted conducted myself in the past and everything. Mm-hmm. And I've had friends that I really liked a lot and everything. And there was incidences that happened with people I didn't even know. And I would support the person I didn't know. So I don't always jump on just because that person is somebody I know or something, support them 100%. I would, I try to even be fair to people I don't know, even around my friends, I've actually lost a friend or two over the years because I didn't like the way they acted, and I actually respected the person I didn't know more. So I think that character right there kind of shows me that I can stick to that. I can stick to that, and I feel strongly I can, But it's like I can promise you anything and this and that, but I'm just, I'm trying to be as honest as I can here,
Yeah, and like I said, I don't mean to belabor the points.
No.
Apparently that's what
Not
I'm
at
doing,
all.
but it's a very important point, obviously, right?
Oh, definitely.
And,
Yep.
it's not every person is the right juror for the right case, so that's why we ask a lot of these questions.
Exactly.
When you retired, well, let me ask it this way. When you were asked about the demonstrations that have taken place in the Twin Cities area, you indicated community is always affected by these types of demonstrations. What did you mean by that?
Positive and negative both. It should, there's, like you say, there's people demonstrate. There's two sides to everything. I mean, it affects the community. It affects them in positive ways, negative ways. If something doesn't turn out, something bad happens or something, obviously. But that's the kind I was looking at. There's.
What are the positive ways that you can think of that?
It makes society step back and whatever's they're demonstrating, take a hard look at it. Is it something that needs to be improved? Is it something that society can do, whatever the demonstration's about? I mean, somebody's bringing this demonstration up because they feel that there's a problem there, so they're trying to bring it up to I guess the political people deal with it. So that would be a good thing for a demonstration. Maybe things will improve, whatever the improvements is supposed to be. I don't know,
Yeah.
It's a general way of looking at it, I guess.
And some of the negative things?
Negative things would be, obviously with the different protests and stuff, a few things happened that probably would have been nice if it didn't happen, you know what I mean? Some of the excess of protesting. I'm trying to be thoughtful here, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there was destruction of property. That's always a bad thing. Sometimes, that's not good. So,
Did you? I started this line of questioning intending to ask about your job. If you were still on the job as a fire captain when a lot of that stuff was happening.
No, I retired 6 years ago, so it was,
Whether you call them demonstrations, protests, riots,
whatever.
Yeah. Do you think that was handled by the various government agencies properly?
I think it just took everybody off guard and people weren't prepared and things happen, you know what I mean? Stuff happens and, I'm sure there's enough pointing to go around to everybody. I have I guess
No strong opinions either way about it, really, or?
No, because I wasn't living in the city then, and it's like, I guess I was in my own little world, retirement world, So, how that goes,
31 years, you're entitled to go live retirement, right?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
So. There was this chart of questions with agree or not agree. Do you remember doing that?
On the questionnaire?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure I filled it out.
Yeah.
What was on there?
Yeah, this was a long time ago. I don't expect you to have perfect recall of
I remember stuff pretty
Yeah,
good.
okay. One of the things that you were asked about is because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions that they make while on duty. And you circled somewhat disagree. Should you want me to?
Say that again.
Yeah, you probably
What's
want
that?
me to.
Okay.
So you put somewhat disagree that
Okay.
because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions that they make.
Yeah, I don't know if I was looking in if on the fire department. See, if we're out in the field and something's going on, generally in the fire department, it's command is in charge, like the captain. If there's firefighters, if something's going on in that scene, usually the firefighters can object to it, but usually it's after the scene you have a fireside chat and you sit around and then they can bring up all their questions they had that could have made it better or whatever. Was I thinking about when they're actually doing the job at the time? What was it?
Yeah, it's a tough worded question.
I don't know what I was thinking of that. I know that when you're out in the field, generally with any military organization, fire, police, and stuff, they kind of give a lot of leeway to the person in charge. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they're guiding and then you don't, when there's something going down at the time, they usually don't, try to force their senior officer to do something else. You know what I mean? They're, after the fact you bring it up.
And the way this one is worded, and
So-
it talks about not second guessing, and you said you somewhat disagree with that. So
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, right. I'm not second guessing. Oh, yeah, it's, people can, not everybody looks at some situation and, you may second guess what they're doing. It's possible. Yeah, I've second guessed what chiefs did all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes there was nothing I could do but do what they wanted anyways because they were in charge.
Yeah.
But you second guess people a lot, and sometimes you can bring it up, but it doesn't do you any good. And then sometimes there's people that listen to your subordinates because they are very knowledgeable and stuff, and then you change your mind. So I guess
yeah, and maybe even the term second guessing there, that's kind of hard to apply as well.
yeah, I'm not really.
Let me ask you the question this way. Like firefighters, police officers have dangerous jobs, right? You agree with that?
Yep, they can. Yep, sure.
But does that excuse us from looking back and evaluating what an officer or a firefighter did when they were on the job?
No, we're always training, reevaluating ourselves, readjusting ourselves. We make mistakes all the time. It's just the way it is. It's, some of it's not as bad as others. Some it's worse. It's like, like you say, and things are the way they are. You know what I mean?
As the captain, I assume you make some decisions that others have to follow.
That's correct.
And so equally apply to your own decisions that maybe have to be reviewed later. Evaluate?
I change my mind all the time with my decisions. I always value the people underneath me. I was never one of those captains that you don't do it that way. I was always willing to, because as long as the job got done and everybody did a good job and they stayed professional and stuff, I was okay with them doing it their way. So I'm pretty open-minded about stuff like that, I guess.
Okay. One of the other questions was, people today do not give our law enforcement officers the respect they deserve. And you answered somewhat agree. Do you recall that?
I would somewhat agree on that.
Okay.
Somewhat agree on that.
Tell me why.
I mean, you can, yeah. I think I somewhat agree on that. You know what I mean? Just the way it is.
Why?
It's society. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's not any particular group, any particular anything. It just, I guess we're just, I don't know. We're a little more relaxed. Our society than it used to be. You know what I mean? We're not so. We're more. There's more knowledge and more information, everything else out there. So that plays a part in it too, I think, and it's.
Yeah. So what do you mean by we're a little more relaxed now?
Well, as far as years ago, you worked the same job for 30 years all the time, like I did, and years ago you did this, you did that, you never went outside the box. It was more. Our society was a lot more structured. Now we just have a lot more things going on, a lot more information, a lot more this and that. And I think there's, we were probably, our society was driven certain directions years ago, like with the military or whatever it was. And things kind of changed a little bit over the years. I'm not saying it's always bad or always good or what, but it has.
So going back to this question, you think that maybe police officers aren't getting the respect they deserve like they used to?
I would say if I had to give you a percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, but I bet it's probably, it might be 1% less respect than they got 20 years ago. I don't know. I'm just saying. I just reached at something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't really have a lot of information behind it when I answered that question. I just think, as a general rule, I think that probably 51% of the population probably thinks they don't get enough respect if they do. That's all I see.
That's why you put somewhat agree.
That's why I put somewhat agree. It's probably just a little bit that way, but it's I don't feel strongly about it one way or another.
Yeah.
So.
You were asked a question about Black Lives Matter. Do you remember that question?
Yeah, I really don't know a lot about the group. I really haven't been paying attention to stuff like I should. You know what I mean? I probably should pay attention to things more. So I really don't. I don't know what I put on there, but I probably put down there. I don't know if I have a slightly positive or negative, or I probably put neutral on it because I don't know nothing about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
You actually checked somewhat unfavorable.
Did I write that down?
Yeah, and you indicated that it seems the group could work harder to stop inner city gun crimes. Do you think we have a problem now with inner city gun crimes?
Well, I think so. There is. You know what I mean? So.
And you think that group could do more to?
They could probably work harder on that area. Yes.
Do you think that group is associated with some of the demonstrations or protests or riots that led to some of that property damage we talked about earlier?
I don't think it was any particular group. I think it was the moments of what went down and what happened, and everybody wanted to come out and vent and say how they felt about something and come together as a community or a society or whatever and make change. And I don't think it was any particular group or anything. I don't want to point fingers at any groups because, it looks like most people would have an input in it, you know what I mean? So.
Mr. Gray talked about his client and trying to make sure they get a fair trial for Ms. Potter. You recall that? You understand that the state is a party to this case as well, right?
Right.
The state has the right to a fair trial as well.
Yep.
Is that something you think is important?
Oh, definitely it's important.
As a juror, of course, you're a neutral party, right? You're in the middle.
Yes.
Do you think you can provide a fair and impartial trial as a juror to both sides?
I definitely feel like, and I definitely want it to be. I want it to be fair. You know what I mean? I do. I'll definitely do my best on that.
Do you have any concerns that if you're a juror in this case, how a verdict might be received by the former people that you worked with in the police department or the fire department?
Not at all. No, not at all. I really feel in this, I think whatever the jury decides, I think it's going to be fair. That's why I look at it. It's going to be fair and fair and just. That's what we want. So I'm going with the system. That's what it's going to be, and that's what I feel. And it's. So I don't feel. I think people. That's all people want. I don't care who you are. If you're a citizen or a firefighter or who you are, that's what you want.
Can I have a moment, please? Excuse me. Okay, thank you, jury. I have no further questions. We'll pass the jury.
Okay. Juror number 8, you will be on this jury. Okay, I'm sorry. You're dismissed from this panel.
Okay.
But I really appreciate the fact that you came in and everything else. It was wonderful meeting you, and you are done with jury service, okay?
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, for the record, the state exercised a peremptory strike on juror number 8. Okay. Okay, juror number 9, welcome. Please have a seat. And would you please remove your mask? Okay. All right, thank you for filling out the questionnaire. I know it was a little long. I don't really have that many questions, follow-up questions for you. Okay. You indicated in response to question number 2 that that question is, from what you've heard, seen, read, do you have a general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter? And you checked the answer somewhat negative and stated she was an officer for a very long time and she made a grave mistake. I guess my question to you is this. We want jurors to decide the case, the question of whether or not the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt, based solely on the evidence in the case and my instructions of law, and not on general impressions that you may have. Would you be able to set aside any general impressions that you may have and keep an open mind and listen to the evidence and decide the case based on only that evidence?
I believe I would be open to listening to all evidence presented in the courtroom. I have heard a small amount. I don't often watch the news, so I've seen very small or little coverage of the story. but I do believe I would not be biased towards the case in a sense. You'd like me to elaborate further?
Do you want to elaborate further? You can if you like.
No, I don't have much more to say on the matter.
Okay. You stated that your friend's shop was broken into during one of the demonstrations, and he had inventory stolen. I guess my question to you is this. You talked to your friend, and he or she was upset about that. Correct?
Yes, very
All
much
right.
so. A friend of mine, I've known him for about a decade, since 2011. He, after the civil rights protests in the city of Minneapolis, his shop was raided. He then spent a year rebuilding his inventory and redesigning the shop. And then after this incident, the protests again, he was targeted at his shop. And it was a point of frustration after he had built back the back up his shop and inventories and whatnot. So he was directly related to this, so
Okay. And I
affected by it.
all right. And I take it you felt bad for him because he was a friend, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Again, I'm going to ask you this. Can you decide this case based upon the evidence and not have any sympathy or whatever concern for your friend without regard to that?
If I'm being 100% honest, I don't think it's my relationship with my friend and what happened to him that would decide my viewpoint on the case. I think it would be more of just my opinion on what had happened. I don't think that I would be so persuaded to not want to hear the evidence because I don't know a lot about the case.
Okay.
So I don't think my relationship to my friend would persuade me in one direction or the next. So
In other words, what happened to your friend is not going to make you tend to vote not guilty or guilty.
no,
Is that accurate?
in alone would not. No.
Okay. Thank you. You indicated that police officers are more likely to respond with force when confronting a black suspect than when dealing with the white suspect. And you circled strongly agree. Could you elaborate on your answer?
I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to make observations. I've had people of color, friends of mine, directly face law enforcement in a way that I have not, just from my own personal life experiences. I feel that one has to question, is there racial bias? I think that's something that all of us question to an extent. So I just think the tone set for a traffic arrest varies based on your race. I think that's reality that we face. So I don't specifically remember answering that question, but if you're asking me right here, I think it does make a difference. So yeah.
Okay, you've observed situations where that was true, but can you keep an open mind and listen to the evidence in this case before coming to a conclusion on whether or not that happened here or not?
Although I do believe that is reality that a lot of officers face, or current political climate or in our country, but I would want to hear any and all evidence before making a judgment. I wouldn't have my mind set 100% prior to the case. I do believe that everyone should have equal and fair opportunity. I know nothing about the defendant. I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about her family. None of that. So I would like to hear evidence presented before I would just make up my decision, yes.
Okay. Finally, in response to the question, do you want to serve as a juror in this case, you checked not sure. Do you still feel that way?
I just wanted to come and be honest with my answering and questioning, and then just let the cookies crumble as they may. I'm not leaning towards yes or no.
I take it you've never served on a jury
Never,
before?
no.
Okay,
No.
all right. And what was your reaction when you got your jury summonses?
It was very surprising. You don't think it will happen to you until it does. It was actually sent to a former address where I had lived. So my friend that his shop got broken into was actually his home that he owns, and I was renting from him. So I had moved and updated my address, and about a month later he told me that I had received this packet, didn't know what it was, opened it, first time I had been summoned for a jury. So it was surprising, to say the least. Especially a case of this nature was surprising. I have had the ability to, or opportunity to live abroad throughout my life, and I do have many foreign friends who are aware of this case that have brought it up to me without me mentioning it. So it's a lot of, it was surprising, to say the least.
Do you still live in Hennepin County?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you willing to serve?
If the prosecution and defense chooses me, I would. My work is small in nature. I don't have much backup to cover it, but if I'm selected for jury, I don't believe I would say no. So yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, that's all the questions I have.
Good afternoon.
My name is Paul Lang. I have some questions on behalf of Mrs. Potter, Officer Potter.
Okay.
You sound hesitant as we sit here about serving, and that's kind of just a intuitive feeling I have about it after listening to several other jurors too. And am I right in thinking that you're a little hesitant? Just curious.
I don't necessarily know how to answer that. I do know, because of my personal work, I have clients to attend to, and I don't know how that would fill out or play out in my own personal life. As far as the case itself, I don't know if you'd want to select me.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. That's what I thought. And maybe you can tell me why.
Excuse me, Mr. Lee, I don't think your microphone is on.
It is on.
Oh, okay.
Well, why wouldn't I select you? Why wouldn't I want to select you?
Full disclosure, I have heard the age of the, can I use the word victim, or the...
can use Mr. Wright if you like.
Mr. Wright.
How's it? Mr. Wright would be fine.
And then I've also heard that Miss Potter has been an officer for quite some time. And me sitting here, I don't know what evidence I could hear that would change my mind per se. But then again, that's hard for me to say without hearing any evidence at all. I've heard very minor news on the case itself. So,
Well, it sounds like you kind of made up your mind a little bit. It's okay if you say that too. I mean, we all kind of have opinions about things. I mean, if you've already kind of made up your mind on certain things, it's all right. I mean, it's okay for you to say that. You have permission to say that if that's kind of what you're telling us.
that, I think you've identified it quite accurately. This is a new experience for me, but I do have some biases against your client, and that I guess I'm curious to hear evidence as to what would personally change my mind on the story and what happened, what transpired.
I mean, the sort of a cart before the horse problem that we have. The problem is that we have to have a clean slate going in.
Yeah, I understand.
Before we start, and then you hear things, and so the clean slate is that you don't have an opinion or don't have a bias, as you would say, and it's okay to have a bias again. So that's what we're trying to inquire here. I mean, I can get in all the details of your questionnaire. I have 10 questions for you, but I'd just like to cut to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you tell us whether, given what you know about the case, given her age, given the age of Mr. Wright, given what you've read, given your friends who've talked to you about the matter, you can be unbiased here. That's the question.
I guess the main concern for me would be, in all honesty, how, if you are a seasoned officer, it's almost like getting in a car crash. If you're about to get in a crash, you know the difference between the brake and the gas. And if you don't know the difference between a taser and a rifle, or not a rifle, but a pistol, I then question your judgment and your expertise. And to convince me differently, that would be the whole point of the defense. And
well, she has no obligation to convince you of anything, really. I mean,
absolutely.
She doesn't. At a trial, she would testify, but maybe you're not going to be at the trial. But I mean, she doesn't have to. We don't have to do anything. I mean, they have to prove this to you. She has no obligation to say anything.
I know.
Well, I mean, are you going to be are you biased to a point where you would not be fair here? That's the end question that the judge would ask you, or the state would ask you, and I've just asked you.
I think that if you can find other juror that would be 100% unbiased, I would not be your best selection. So I can say that, yes. Okay. But I don't think that many people out there wouldn't have any bias towards this case. I don't have much more to say about it.
May I pause, Your Honor?
Yes.
Juror 9, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm just going to interrupt just for a couple of questions I wanted to ask you to sort of follow up on what you've been answering, because we get your answers and we understand that you're being candid, and we really appreciate that. But the bottom line is, we all have biases, right? And I think you recognize you have some biases about the case because of what you know, right?
Yes.
And a lot of jurors are going to have information about the case. The question is, can you set that aside? And when you serve as a juror, you listen to that evidence you look forward to hearing and make a decision based on what happened here in the courtroom in a fair and impartial manner. That's the question, really. And you're the only one that can tell us this, right? So just a candid question about, I'll tell you why I asked, because in your jury questionnaire you were asked, can you set aside your bias, passion, prejudices, and decide this only on the evidence? And you wrote yes. No equivocation there. So, yes, you recognize you have these biases. And recognize that is a big part of dealing with it, right? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do acknowledge the bias. I also believe in a fair trial, no matter what the case. So I do want to hear both sides, defense and prosecution. So I do believe that I would be able to not draw a conclusion 100% by just what I believe now. I do honestly believe to a fair trial and the defense's ability to put the case up there. And so yes, I acknowledge the bias, but I do not believe that I'm so hardcore set in stone in what I believe. I'm sure there's many other factors that will come into play in the actual trial. So
yeah,
yes.
In your questionnaire you were asked about these very important principles of law. The presumption of innocence. The burden of proof is ours, not the defendant's at all, right?
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
And the burden of proof being beyond a reasonable doubt. And you would have to apply that, and you said you would in your questionnaire. So the question today, and again, only you can answer this, is can you set aside that previous information, decide the case carefully based on the evidence you hear in the case in a fair and impartial manner?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And by believe so, because we're Midwesterners and we talk like that, but do you think you would do that?
Yes, I would do that, yes.
That's all the voir dire I have at this point. And
Thank you so much for your honesty, and thank you for coming here today. You're dismissed from this panel, all right? So you're done with jury duty. Have a great day.
Thank you.
granted the defense request for a strike for cause. This juror admitted that he was biased against a defendant. He questioned how a seasoned police officer could not know the difference between a taser and a gun. And I think he was being honest when he said that. I don't believe he was rehabilitated by leading questions from the prosecutor. Okay, we're bringing in a new group now. excited. All right, good afternoon, panel members. I'm Regina Chu, and I'll be the presiding judge in this trial. First of all, I want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for interrupting your normal routine. Thank you for fulfilling such an important civic obligation. These are, of course, not normal times. These are extremely trying times. So it is with extra heartfelt appreciation from the entire judicial system that we say thank you for responding to your jury summonses. Upholding the rights we cherish, the right to a trial by jury and the right to a speedy trial in unusual, trying times is the American way. You validate these constitutional rights by appearing today and by proving your willingness to serve. You jurors are our heroes. You are ordinary people who are called to do extraordinary work to make sure our justice system moves forward, even in the midst of a pandemic. You are upholding the Constitution, the very foundation of our democracy, and we could not do this without you. Not all of us can serve in the military, but what we can do is do our civic duty by serving as jurors. Our justice system would not work without good citizens like you. I'm saying thank you again because I really can't say it enough. As you know, this is a criminal case, and in this case, the state of Minnesota has charged the defendant, Kimberly Potter, with the following charges. Count 1 is first-degree manslaughter predicated on reckless use or handling of a firearm. And that charge alleges that on or about April 11, 2021, in Brooklyn Center, Hennepin County, Minnesota, defendant Kimberly Ann Potter caused the death of Daunte Wright while committing the misdemeanor offense of reckless handling or use of a firearm so as to endanger the safety of another with such force and violence that death or great bodily harm to any person was reasonably foreseeable. Count 2 alleges second-degree manslaughter, and that count alleges that on or about April 11, 2021, in Brooklyn Center, Hennepin County, Minnesota, defendant Kimberly Ann Potter caused the death of Daunte Wright by her culpable negligence, whereby Kimberly Potter created an unreasonable risk and consciously took a chance of causing death or great bodily harm to Daunte Wright while using or possessing a firearm. The defendant has pleaded not guilty. This plea denies the charges and places upon the state of Minnesota the burden of proving defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The state is represented by A.G. Keith Ellison, Mr. Matt Frank, Ms. Erin Eldridge, and Mr. Josh Larson. The defendant is represented by Mr. Earl Gray and Mr. Paul Ing and Ms. Amanda Montgomery. And will the defendant please rise? Thank you. I have two clerks that will be helping me throughout this trial. You may have met them already. Mr. Zach Kramer and Ms. Jessica Bauer. They're responsible for all the administrative matters that need to be done during this trial. Now, if you want to send a message to me of a personal nature, please let my staff know, and they'll make sure I get the message. And then sitting in front of me is Carly Davis. She is a certified court reporter, and she's responsible for taking down all the testimony and keeping a formal record of the trial. That means when you respond to questions, you must speak loudly and clearly so our court reporter can make an accurate record of the proceedings. If your answer is yes or no, you must answer orally instead of shaking your head. And please refrain from saying uh-huh or because that doesn't come out on the record. All right, with respect to masks, please wear your mask while you're in the courtroom, and you're required to also wear your mask in all areas of the courthouse. The attorneys also are required to wear their masks. They are allowed to remove their masks when they're questioning from the podium. Okay? Now, we're about to start voir dire, which is jury selection. There's going to be two parts to the voir dire. I'm going to start out by asking you general questions as a group. You don't need to respond to the general questions orally. I'm just going to ask you to raise your hands. Then, what will happen after the general questions, I will do individual voir dire. I'll excuse all the panel members except one from this courtroom, and we'll question you individually, and you'll be questioned in the witness box behind the plexiglass. And I'll ask you to remove your mask when you're in the witness box. Okay. Please note that we can't usually control the courtroom temperature very well, so remember to dress in layers, okay? You are also allowed to bring a beverage into the courtroom as long as it has a cover on it. Now, there may be delays that occur during this trial. Of course, we'll take lunch. Will be breaks in the morning and the afternoon. There may be other breaks too, and I want to apologize in advance for any delays that might occur during this trial. I try to deal with all legal matters with the attorneys before you come to court or after you leave in the evening, but sometimes things come up that we didn't anticipate, and that's what I'm apologizing for if that should happen, so I hope you understand. At this point, I'm going to give you some preliminary instructions. There are rules of law that apply in a criminal case. I'm going to give you some of those rules now. In the questioning that will take place, you may be asked whether you will accept and follow the rules of law that I give you. And you should have these instructions in mind when you answer those questions. A complaint is not evidence. It creates no inference or presumption of guilt. No member of the jury should in any way be prejudiced against the defendant because a complaint has been filed against her or because the defendant is on trial. The defendant is presumed innocent. In order for you to find the defendant guilty, the state must prove guilt. The defendant does not have to prove innocence. The presumption of innocence remains with the defendant unless and until the defendant has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by evidence admitted in this trial. A common misperception of the American justice system is that the jury determines whether the accused person is guilty or innocent. That is not what American juries do in a criminal case. There is no such thing as an innocent verdict in American criminal law. The jury's verdict is either guilty or not guilty. Guilty means proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Not guilty means not proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, to make sure that both the defendant and the state receive a fair trial by an impartial jury, it's going to be necessary for me and the attorneys to ask you some questions. Remember that you will be under oath when you answer our questions and that you must answer truthfully. You know, this questioning is a very important part of the process. All of us hold personal beliefs and all of us have had things happen to us. Our goal in jury selection is to try to determine whether or not you hold some opinion so strongly, or if something has happened to you or someone near and dear to you that would interfere with your ability to be a fair and impartial juror in this type of a case. In other words, a personal opinion or a life experience that would essentially prevent you from listening to the evidence in the case and deciding this case solely on the evidence. Please don't take any offense to the questions you are asked. None of us wishes to pry into your personal lives. Our sole purpose and our obligation is to ensure that the jurors who decide this case are neutral, open-minded, and fair. Neutral means that before you hear all the evidence, you are not leaning one way or the other on the question of whether the state has proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Open-minded means that you're willing to listen and consider all the evidence. Fair means you will base your verdict on the evidence in this case and not on anything that is not presented in this case. We want you, of course, to bring your common sense into the jury room, but your verdict must be based on the evidence you hear during the trial. Your obligation is to answer the questions honestly and tell us of anything, even if you are not directly asked, that might affect your ability to be neutral, open-minded, and fair. Some of you that are called to be questioned will be excused from this case. Please don't take any offense to that. I hope you will understand. At this point, I will ask that all of you stand up and raise your right hand while my clerk swears you in under oath.
Do you affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror? If so, please say, I do.
Okay, please be seated. Thank you. All right, I'm going to start with the group questions now. And again, please don't respond out loud. Just raise your hand. Do any of you have any serious concerns about your health? If you were called to be a juror in this case, please raise your hand. Okay, no hands were raised. Second question. Our system of law presumes the defendant innocent of the charges against her unless and until she has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof is on the state. The defendant does not have to prove her innocence, and she is presumed innocent. Do you accept the principle that the defendant is presumed innocent and that the state has the burden of proof? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Does anyone disagree with that principle? Please raise your hand. No hands are raised. If you serve as a juror, I'll instruct you as to the law. You must follow the law as I give it to you, even if you believe the law is or should be different. Are you willing to do this? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Oh, okay, all hands are raised. If you're chosen as a juror, I'll instruct you that proof beyond a reasonable doubt is such proof as ordinarily prudent men and women would act upon in their most important affairs. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense. A reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all possible. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all possibility of doubt. Does anyone disagree with that principle of law? If so, please raise your hand. No hands are raised. In arriving at your verdict, if you sit as a juror, the subject of penalty or punishment is not to be discussed or considered by you. This is a matter that lies solely with the court and within the limits prescribed by law. The subject of penalty or punishment must not in any way affect your decision as to whether or not the state has proven the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Are you willing to follow this instruction? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Under our system of justice, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence produced in court and the law that the judge instructs, and not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. Would you be able to follow this principle of law? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. There will be police officers who will testify in this case, as well as other witnesses. I'm going to give you some guidelines in determining whether a witness is believable or not believable, and it's basically a matter of common sense. But things to look at are, how did the witness appear? Did he or she seem honest and sincere? Will the witness gain or lose if the case is decided a certain way? Was the witness's testimony consistent with other evidence in the case? And what is the relationship of the witness to the parties? Would you be able to use these guidelines in deciding the credibility of a police officer just as you would any other witness? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Is there anyone here who would automatically believe the testimony of a police officer just because he or she is in law enforcement? Please raise your hand. No hands are raised. Is there anyone here who would totally discount the testimony of a police officer just because of his or her position? Please raise your hand. Okay, no hands are raised. Now, before you came in here, you were given a list of possible witnesses. They may not all testify, but my question to you is this. Please raise your hand if any of you know any of the witnesses on the list. And I'd like you to raise your hand even if you're not sure. Okay, no hands were raised. Do any of you have trouble hearing or understanding what I'm saying? If so, please raise your hand. No hands are raised. Okay, let me give you an idea of what the schedule is going to be. We will start with opening statements and the trial by December 8, and we expect to be finished before Christmas Eve. That is our best estimate. Now, don't be concerned if we don't finish by Christmas Eve. I intend to take Christmas Eve and that weekend off and start the following Monday on December 7 if we are not done. So you don't have to worry about missing Christmas with your family and friends. As far as day-to-day, the trial will be conducted from 9 o'clock to either 4:30 or 5 o'clock. There will be a 20-minute break in the morning, about approximately 10:30. and a 20-minute break in the afternoon, but we typically try to take a break by 3 o'clock or 3:15. And there will be a lunch break from 12:30 to 1:30. Okay, so that'll be our typical trial day. Now, please remember, while court is in recess, you must not talk to anyone involved in this case, nor should you discuss the case among yourselves. During the recess, you might see the attorneys or parties in the hallways. Don't take offense if they don't stop and say hello or talk to you. Everyone involved in this case has been ordered to have no contact or communication with any member of the jury panel. Any violation of that rule could jeopardize this trial, and this prohibition will continue until a verdict has been rendered. And of course, do not do any research about this case. Don't do anything as far as social media on this case. And I will remind you about that from time to time. Okay, at this point, members of the panel, I'm going to ask that everyone leave, follow the deputy out, except for juror number 10. Okay, juror number 10, will you please come up and take a seat right next to me in the witness box? And will you please remove your mask?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How are you doing today?
Doing fine.
Okay. Thank you for being so patient.
Yes,
We were a
ma'am.
little bit behind. I just have a couple of follow-up questions on your questionnaire. You indicated that you have a very negative general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter. And your answer is, I feel this way because with as much experience on the force, she should know the difference between a taser and a gun. You also have a somewhat negative general impression of Daunte Wright. And you indicated, I feel this way, he should not have been shot, but his choices he made were incorrect. My question to you is this. Of course, you've heard things and you've formed some opinions about the parties in this case. And, you know, that's perfectly okay. But if you were chosen as a juror in this case, you have to put that aside and decide this case based solely on the evidence that is presented in this case, and you must follow the law and decide the case in a fair and impartial manner. Would you be able to do that?
I would definitely be fair, but I'm sorry. Yeah, I would definitely be fair about the case.
Okay.
You know, I just think it's everybody got an opinion, and
Right.
what she did and he did, I don't say it was right for nobody, but it's what it is.
Right. So even though you might have an opinion right now, you can set that aside, listen to the evidence, and decide the case solely on the evidence presented.
I would definitely do that, but I never talk about this type of stuff or politics and stuff, and I'm uncomfortable with being on a jury or stuff like that because it just ain't me.
I understand.
I don't think I've been through a lot this year. My wife 6 months ago had COVID on a ventilator. Now she just went through 6 months month ago with double this sacrament with cancer. I just don't feel comfortable up here dealing with this.
Okay.
I got a lot of other things on my mind.
All right. So You've got a lot of things going on in your personal life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me again what they are?
But, you know, based out the last 6 months, I almost lost my wife twice. You know, and I'm just, then this, I got selected to this, then I'm worried about this, I'm worried about her going through chemo and all that stuff, so.
Okay, so your wife has cancer.
She just had double disectomy, whatever
Okay.
you call it. And
All right.
she went through she was in a coma for a month and a half with this
All right.
COVID stuff. All this happened within 6 months, so.
Okay.
I'm just going through a lot, but I'll be fine. If I get selected, I guess I have to understand and do what I got to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I hope
I
that
just-
she's doing better.
And then another thing, you know, I work for the jail. I'm a food service supervisor at Infant County Workhouse out in Plymouth, Park Lake there. I deal with a lot of inmates, and I live in Champlain, and I just don't, a lot of people know me, and I just won't feel comfortable being a juror.
Can you explain why you would feel uncomfortable being a
Because
juror?
the people that might sit there might know me. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, I feel like I'm well known, not in a bad way, but a good way.
Okay. You're concerned that other jurors will know you, or who?
Just people just come in and sit in the jury. I mean,
Okay.
like they family or her family. I don't know. Somebody might know me.
Okay. Well, do you know any of the Potter family?
I don't know nobody, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that what I heard on the news, she don't live that far from me.
Okay.
So
And do you know any of the Wright family?
I don't know nobody from, but I know Brooklyn Park ain't that far from where I live.
Okay.
So I don't know. Somebody might know me or recognize.
All right. You don't know any of the other
I don't know
jurors?
I don't know no jurors. I ain't never seen nobody.
Okay.
Nobody. I never know.
All right.
Yeah.
But you feel uncomfortable because you feel that other people might recognize you?
But that's just not it. I just it's just hard for me to deal with some this extreme. You know, I'm not used to this. You know, it just be tough.
Yeah, you've never served on a jury.
I never served on a jury. I never had to be asked questions, stuff like that, and that just mean like when people talk about politics, I get away from it. People talk about black and white stuff, I get away from it because it don't concern me, and I just try not to get into that fighting bed with other people and stuff like that. I just never was like that.
I totally
You know,
get that.
I just never was like
You know, this part of the trial is uncomfortable for a lot of people because you're not used to being questioned.
Yeah.
And I don't know any jurors that, find this to be a pleasant situation.
I understand what you're saying, but
And I hope you understand why we have to do it.
it's fine, but I do my best to do the best thing I can to make it fair for both parties. I will never judge nobody either way.
Okay.
I will, but I'm just not comfortable, but I.
Well, it's natural to not be comfortable. This is a totally different situation that you've never experienced.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Everybody feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I do. I just got so much. I got so much going on. Almost about to lose my wife a couple of times this year.
Right.
And I just rather get my mind back on something else than this.
Now your wife is doing better?
Yeah, she got better. Now I was at the doctor with her all day over there. And I've been here earlier. She had to go in because he had the genetic testing and all that stuff. And they talking about chemo, taking this pill. It's a lot of stuff on my mind right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, number 10. Let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
Given the health problems that your wife is undergoing and you're concerned about them legitimately, are you going to be thinking about that the whole time if you're chosen as a juror? Or can you concentrate on the evidence?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say because I don't know if we're going to come back or not,
Okay.
I don't know. I think I can get over, but I can't promise you that.
All right. I guess what I am trying to get at is, will your concerns about your wife's health prevent you from listening to the evidence in the case?
No, ma'am. I would definitely always listen because it's important for both parties, right? And
Potter.
It's important for both of them, and I do understand that. I don't like to see nobody get killed or nobody go to jail for 15, 20 years. That's something I don't wish on nobody. Like, you know, I just want whatever happened. I want to come back and people do the right thing. You know, that's all. Just do the right thing and make,
Okay.
you know.
Right. Okay, thank you for that.
I just pray to God. Let God deal with it.
You know, I should tell you that I talk to jurors all the time after they come to a verdict, and every one of them, even though they didn't really want to serve, they were really glad they did. And they tell me that they learned a lot and that they stepped away from service as a juror with the renewed respect for the system of
I respect
justice.
jury 100%. I just won't be.
I
I
understand.
respect that. That's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it takes you out of your normal routine. It's inconvenient. You have to come downtown. I don't think we pay you enough for parking. I don't, so.
Yeah, I'm the type of guy I hate going downtown.
Yeah.
I hate doing this. Like my wife dropped me off because I didn't want to drive in park. I ain't been downtown in many years.
Yeah.
I moved away from Minneapolis in 2006. I ain't been down here unless I'm going to the doctor. So
Okay.
everything looked different to me. It changed. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be down here. Then you got these people riding and stuff. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I think a lot of people would feel the same way you do. You said that you would have difficulty looking at graphic photographs or video, including photos or video of a person who has died. Now, if you were chosen as a juror and you had to do that, would you do that?
I feel like I wouldn't have a choice, but I don't like doing that. I don't like looking at bullet holes and
Yeah.
I stay away from that. I don't even like the.
I think most people wouldn't like it.
That's just me, you know.
Okay, but if you're chosen as a juror and it was your duty to look at those photographs and videos, would you do it?
Yes, ma'am. I respect the court to give them the honors and be truthful about everything.
Okay.
Yes, I will not sit up here and lie on the oath.
All right, and lastly, there was a question. Do you want to serve as a juror? And you said no. Why do you feel that way? And you indicated my feelings are for my safety. The way everything has gone down with George Floyd in this case, I worry for my safety. Can you?
Not only that.
Do you
it's
still
just
feel that way? Or?
People, you know, they want to ask, you know, everywhere you go, even when they're over with, they want to talk about it. And I'm not the type of guy to deal with that type stuff. So I'd rather just not have part of it because I don't want to be in the middle of that. I don't want to be in the middle. My life is just deal with God and just live a good life. I don't want to be dealing with negative. I'm always about positive, and I don't want to deal with nothing negative.
Okay. I should tell you that you are not required, if you serve as a juror, you're not required to talk to anybody about this case.
And I respect that, and I won't because I know it can enter the case. So I have to do what I have to do, but I'd rather not even go through that.
Okay, I know.
Yes.
But if the parties believe that you would be a fair juror in this case and they picked you to serve, would you serve?
I guess I have to do it. I ain't going to jail. I would. Yes, I have to. I don't want to go to jail.
You wouldn't go to jail if you just
Well,
if you were.
I just, it gets tough.
Yeah.
That'll be tough.
Okay, but would you do it if the parties picked you as a juror?
I ain't gonna sit up here and lie to you. I'd rather not, but I guess I will.
Okay. And I know you're reluctant, but you would do your civic duty, right?
I do my duty. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ng?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
One
How
of
are
the-
you?
Paul Eng is my name. I'm one of the lawyers for Mrs. Potter,
Yes.
Mr. Potter, with Earl Grey, Amanda Montgomery. On the one hand, you would serve. On the other hand, you have a lot going on in your life.
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that service here would be a hardship upon you because of your wife's medical condition?
Yes, sir.
And it would be fair to say as well that you're worried about your personal safety if you were to be picked as a juror. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I just don't want nobody to find out I was on the jury and then they go either way and then it'd be a problem. I don't know.
Well,
I
right now
hear
we're
things about juries, so I don't want to be.
Yeah, so right now we're anonymous, but when the trial ends, there's eventually the jurors' names get released, and then,
Yes.
Are you worried for your personal safety, no matter what your decision is?
True.
So
Yes,
if you
yes, yes.
acquit, if you find that the evidence is insufficient and not proven for Officer Potter, and you find her not guilty, you're worried about ramifications for that, I assume.
Yes.
At the workhouse where you work,
Yes.
in the population up in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park.
Yes, and I work around a lot of inmates. I got 17 inmates in my kitchen.
And your
They comes and goes.
and your concerns about your personal safety are on your mind right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you would rather not be here.
Yes, sir.
And you can be excused if you say it's a hardship or you can't serve in a fair fashion. That's all you got to say.
I can't, probably.
Pardon me?
I probably can't.
You probably can't.
Yep.
I mean, all you got to say is you can't.
I can't.
Yeah, use the
Juror number 10, you are excused, okay? So you're done with jury duty, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you very much for your honesty.
I'm sorry, but yes.
Totally understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
Y'all have a wonderful day. God bless everybody. Yes.
You too.
Thank you.
All right.
So what do I do now?
You're done.
Do I go back to the room?
No, you can go anywhere you want.
Well, do I turn this in?
Yes, the deputy will get that
okay.
from you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, for the record, the parties agreed that juror number 10 could be excused for cause because he has concerns for his own safety should he be on this jury, and his wife is very ill and has personal problems. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's all right, we're going to take a 20-minute break.